All right, let's go into a couple of case studies. And, again, talking about turning information into knowledge through experience. The reason I'm sharing these two case studies is because this is where a lot of the practical experience for this idea of dynamic core stability came from. I had all the textbook information, I had a fair amount of experience in it. And when I got to manage these two cases, they were almost simultaneous with each other. These two cases were going on leading up to the London 2012 games. And the, how we all of us as healthcare providers, we get excited about a topic and we really dive into it. And that time, I was really into dynamic core stability. It was something that I was reading everything that was out there. I was fortunate enough to, share some meals with Dr. Stuart McGill and other leading researchers and pick their brains. And again, just really dive into this topic and then got to apply it. So the first case was and I'm gonna leave out, these athletes said it's okay to share their cases, but I'm gonna leave out a lot of the details just to go into the actual practical portions of it. So this was a male rower, and he was coming off of a pretty significant injury. He had 3 level disc herniations. Actually, one of them was a protrusion, and he had been laid up for almost 3 months, and he was scheduled for a spinal surgery. And I looked at all the imaging and absolutely agreed. I agreed that was going to be something that could help improve his outcomes, especially since he had been on bed rest for months and he had been trying some other thing. This is something he'd been trying to manage for a long time, and it wasn't working out. So I had to talk with him and his coach, and it took some convincing, but I convinced them to delay the surgery by a couple weeks just to implement a dynamic core stability program prior to the surgery. Again, he had been on bed rest for several months, so there was a lot of neuromuscular re-education that needed to be done, and there was a lot of reconditioning that needed to be done. And I felt if we could implement those things prior to going into the surgery, that would give us this big, this opportunity to jump back into it hard directly after the surgery. And with elite sport, especially, we were just about a year out from naming the boat for that London team. And it's super competitive. You've got all of these high performers that are competing for 8 spots in a boat. So it's the odds of getting a spot in a boat are pretty slim. The odds are definitely against you. And I can say from the conversations, this individual was somewhat counted out as a potential for one of those spots, because we're a year out from the games and it's got a 3-level disc herniation, getting ready to go in for spinal surgery. But again, time is of the essence, and me convincing them to hold off a couple of weeks was a big win, because I felt that was going to improve our chances. And so we started off very basic, very simple. Some of the exercises that we're going to show as we go through some of these progressions they're literally just on the floor. They're just core activation. They're just diaphragm engagement. They're breathing. There's some of these simple things. So when we talk about core, we talked about dynamic core stability. The core is a lot of things, right? We know at this point, everybody on here knows that the core is not the rectus abdominis. The core is not doing crunches and sit-ups and those sort of things. The core is sort of everything in between. The core really helps us transfer energy from the ground up to our hands. And again, I'm simplifying these concepts because it's the fact of it when we break it all down. Depending on the source you look at, there's 60 plus muscles that can be associated with, or it was like 32 muscle groups associated with the core. Obviously all of you are familiar with the web exercises platform because you're here, you're on this webinar, you've at least been exposed to it. But all of these things are in there. If you don't have a subscription, you're not currently a user of it, these things are in there. They're plugged in. These progressions are in there to take you step by step